But at the same time, you feel compelled to stand up for other referees and make sure that this type of abuse isn't tolerated in the future and report these kinds of things.
Hello, and welcome to the Kick It with Katie podcast. Today's episode is a continuation of my conversation with keeper and referee Charlie Sandson. If you did not listen to the first half of the interview, please go back and listen to it because I will be referencing things from that part of the conversation going forward. Also, if you love the podcast, please be sure to give it a 5-star review, especially on Apple Podcasts. It really helps out the growth of the podcast. And please share, subscribe, all the things. If you do so and you tag me, Kick It with Katie podcast on Instagram, I will send you a free sticker. Anyway, here is the rest of my interview with Charlie Sandson. I was really interested in your comments about, saying whether they run a half mile or 4 miles in a game. Do you guys track that? Or is it just personally tracked?
When you get to upper levels of refereeing, like if you're working, any of probably the top three divisions of U.S. soccer, that's something that is going to start to get tracked. If you watch MLS games, you'll see that refs have the same little chips in the back of their bib that players will wear, and always wanted one of those chips when I was in college and growing up. I would have loved to have stats tracking like that. I just use my Apple Watch for games, honestly. I like to log, evaluate distances. It's pretty consistent, honestly, for most games. As a center referee, you're probably covering between 5 and 6 miles. As an AR, probably between 3 and 4. It is something I like to keep track of, but I wouldn't necessarily call it an indicator of how I performed on any given day, or in any given match.
But it,
Other than just kind of noticing, like, yeah, there's refs who don't leave the center circle, and they're probably not going very far.
right, right. Well, we have, at least for our 7v7 games, there is a guy who I bet he's 70 years old and he still refs 7v7 games. And he's one that we're like, if we get this guy, and we love him to death, he's super nice. He loves the kids. He wants to be a part of the game and he loves, seeing everybody and getting to know everybody. So he's kind of a staple in our area. But he's one that we know when we get him, he's not leaving the center circle. It is what it is, and they're little kids. So for the most part, the games aren't super out of control. And so it's not like he's dealing with super hot tempers or anything like that. So he's not reffing super huge games. And so I definitely know how that is, as far as like refs not leaving the center circle. And for him, we definitely understand why, because he's pretty old. And his son actually also coaches or refs as well with him. So sometimes they'll be there reffing together and things like that. So that's kind of fun for them to be able to be involved.
I think what hurts parents, I was just going to say, I think everyone that I've met really kind of has an understanding for stuff like that. It's when you see a 15-year-old kid who's like on their phone in the middle of a match. I think that's what drives parents up the wall, and justifiably so.
Mm-hmm. So do you guys have, so for those people that don't know, do you guys have, for new refs, do you have fitness requirements that you have to meet in order to be a referee? Because I know, like you said, there's a lot of running that is involved. So is there stuff that you guys have to do in order to be certified, or is it just like the classes? How does that work to get your certifications?
Great question. At the entry level of refereeing, which USSF calls the grassroots level, there's no particular fitness requirement. You have to take a course, you have to pass a test, you have to do a practical session at a field, but the fitness there is negligible and there's no formal test. Where the fitness tests come in are if you want to referee in college to join the College Referees Association, you have to take a fitness test. And to become a regional referee, which is the first formal step up in refereeing, it requires a fitness test as well, in addition to having refereed a certain number of games at the adult amateur level. And then from there, of course, the fitness requirements get more intense as you move up the refereeing pyramid. But I certainly would say, fitness should not be a blocker to anyone who wants to become a referee. And if anything, refereeing is a fantastic way to build fitness, and definitely something that keeps me incredibly active and arguably in better shape now than I was when I was playing in college, training 5 times a week and lifting another three on top of that. I'm in maybe the best shape I've ever been in because I run a ton as a part of this.
So the question that I remembered I was going to ask you is, so for teams, like obviously in local leagues and things, and I'm assuming that this is the same for everybody everywhere usually, is you get to know the teams in your age group that you play against. Like we even know some teams out of state that we've come up against in different tournaments and leagues and things. So we get familiar with the type of play that some teams have. Do referees appreciate if a coach, or I would assume just the coach, I've never seen a parent do this. I do know coaches that have done this, that will give the referee a heads up and say, hey, watch number whatever, he likes to hit from behind or something. Or, hey, I don't know, any information about the opposing team. Do referees like that? Do they discredit it, not really think about it? Do you guys find that helpful at all if you're given a heads up, like if you're not familiar with the team or anything?
That's a great question. I think it depends. I can certainly tell you that it doesn't particularly impact me one way or the other. I view each game as a blank slate, I would say. I'll take context of the game into account, but I'm not really going to view any particular player differently based on a piece of information that a coach or certainly a parent has given me before the run of play. One thing that we'll do as referees is we'll always have a pregame conference. We'll go over, usually the center ref will go over how he likes to referee a match. He'll talk with his assistant referees about particular points of emphasis for the game or things he doesn't want to focus as much on. For example, I always tell my ARs I do not care about foul throws unless the player throwing it in chucks the ball 30 yards further than he would have been able to do had he done it legally. Please keep your flag down and let's keep the game moving. Some referees will say to their ARs, hey, if you see a foul going in, like for the attacking team, please wait and look at me before you flag for it because I want to have those calls. Or for all penalty decisions, please wait for me, give me body language, but don't do anything in terms of flagging. In addition to all those things, we'll talk about our previous recollections of teams. And there, if another referee says, hey, I've refereed this particular team before, it's going to be a long game for you, I'll take that into consideration. But I think, something from a coach, I would almost interpret it's just as possible that it is gamesmanship or sour grapes from a previous match as it is a well-intentioned piece of heads up. And if it is something that I think deserves to be calling out, I'm going to see it pretty quickly anyway.
Right.
If you tell me, hey, number 7 likes to charge at people from 20 yards away and elbow them in the back during challenges, like I'm going to catch that.
You'll see
So
it.
I think it's one of those things where as a coach, yeah, does it hurt? No. Is it going to make referees mad at you? No. But I also don't think it's something where you're really going to affect how the game is refereed either.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I know I've seen coaches do that to us on teams that I've been on. And, we've given a heads up to, refs before. Even just in league play or whatever, like this is gonna get out of hand. Like we'll try and stay calm type of a thing, but it's gonna get out of hand just because we know what's gonna happen. And so sometimes the refs will be like, hey, thanks for the heads up, or yeah, man, that really did get out of control type of a thing. And after the game or whatever. But most of the referees, at least in our area, we've usually know most of them. We've seen them at some point. We obviously aren't in Utah. We're not a very huge market, so we know a lot of referees. We do know some referees that, which I thought was really interesting. At one point, a group of referees from our state moved and like rented a house or something down in Arizona because the market was so big for referees at that point. And so they went down there and they made a buttload of money for whatever it was that they did. I don't know if they're still down there. I think some of them have come back. I don't know if it was like a summer gig that they did type of a thing, but well, I hope it wasn't summer because it's Arizona and it's hot there. But anyway, so I have known some referees that have done some stuff like that. That's been pretty interesting to see where they've taken their careers to. So do you have like an ultimate goal with your reffing that you want to do? Are you still trying to climb the ladders within the ranks of refereeing? Or do you just like where you're at?
Yeah, absolutely. At this point, no, at this point, I'm pretty determined to go as far as this will take me. I'm a really good referee, it turns out, and I'm a little bit as much surprised as anyone else. I played at a really competitive level in college. I didn't play, I was on the bench, but I was on a very competitive college team, I guess I could say,
Mm-hmm.
and regard myself as a pretty good goalkeeper and someone who's played with and against a lot of very talented people. And if anything, after a few years in this, I think I'm even a better referee than a coach, than a player, excuse me. So we'll see how far I go with it. Is MLS attainable? Maybe. I mean, I just think getting to that level in anything is hard. At a certain level, it becomes about chance and luck and something breaking your way.
Mm-hmm.
But would I like to referee USL Championship, USL League One? Absolutely. And then from there we see where it goes. I'm still playing at a pretty high level, so at some point there will be a decision there. Ironically, I am a referee's worst nightmare as a player, and if anything, being a referee has made me much more of a menace because I now consider myself schooled in the dark arts, if you will. But it's all, once you get to be an adult, I think it becomes a balance of, your main job, your side hustle, how far you want to carry it. I think that's, if I had to give a word of advice to younger referees out there, to even just players, get as far as you can while you're young, but before you start having, a job that you work 60 hours a week at and is amazing and everything, but limits a little bit your untapped, unlimited potential with where you can go in the game. So if you're a young referee debating, hey, should I go for regional while I'm still in college? Absolutely do it. If you're 16 years old and you're like, I want to sign up to be a referee, I might want to do it, but I'm not sure, take the plunge, get started. I think you'll be glad you did. Certainly, I've had a great time with this, and hopefully there's many, many years and lots of growth still left.
Mm-hmm. What information would you like to share with parents or players, even coaches, about your job that maybe they don't know?
That's a great question. I think a couple things. The first, and this one people might not expect, but I love when people try to game the referees, actually. I am a huge proponent of gamesmanship and appealing for a corner that obviously is a goal kick. I'm a huge fan of, even diving. I'm like, if you can get away with it, absolutely go for it. Coaches, do everything in your power to get an edge for your team. It's not going to affect me one way or the other, but I really like it. I think there's a larger than you would think segment of referees out there who really appreciate the game and who know ball and who are there because of a passion and a love for the game, but are not there to cramp your style, are not there to stymie you. We've been in your shoes as players. So like I said, I'm still playing and I am horrible as a goalkeeper to referees. I will appeal for nonsense. I'm an inveterate time waster. I use everything at my disposal to win. And as a ref, I totally get that. And I regulate it as I'm supposed to, but I'm certainly not blind to it. And I promise you, in the back of my mind, I'm chuckling as you appeal for handball when a ball deflected off a defender from an inch and a half away and like grazed his upper shoulder. Like I promise you, I'm actually not mad at you when you do that. It's part of the game that I love, and I think there's a lot of people out there like that. Um,
Hmm.
the other thing I would say, and this is a little bit more serious, is we're watching a very different game than everyone else is. There are a lot of different variables which the referees are keeping track of, which aren't even occurring to players and coaches. And I think especially for coaches, they're standing still the whole game, and there are things that look really obvious to them. And from 10 yards away, running as fast as you can, we have a very different perspective. Sometimes it's a better perspective, sometimes it's a worse perspective. We're also looking at 10 other things the coach isn't. As
Hmm.
I'm doing a diagonal sprint across the field, I'm checking my AR for offside. I'm looking over my shoulder for that guy who was involved in an off-ball altercation 5 minutes ago, making sure he isn't taking a swing at somebody. I'm mentally making a note that the right back, number 32, he's on a yellow, and I might need to, talk to him as he's running up to go make a challenge. I might need to say something. Um, Situations like corner kicks. We're watching 22 players moving and grappling with each other at once. We're looking for some things that are probably a little bit different than you, and it maybe makes it harder to see because there's one referee and two ARs, and we're moving around and we got a bunch to track as opposed to a player whose shirt might be getting grabbed, but it's hidden behind three people.
Hmm.
So I think not that I would really ask coaches or players to do anything about it, but I do think, as a referee, like the insight that I have to share is there's probably a lot happening during the match that we're thinking about that you maybe don't realize that we're thinking about.
Hmm. Yeah, and I know one of the things that I've come to know as a coach is, even as a parent and former player, is a lot of times when a ref has made a call, you are not going to change his mind. So, a lot of times, unless it was something blatantly, absolutely obvious that maybe the AR was like, hey, it actually did go off of this player, it should be a goal kick versus corner kick or something. Um, but usually, like if I see a foul get called for or against us, I'm not, for the most part, I'm not going to argue, especially since my players that I coach are really young. Obviously, as they get older, things get a little bit dirtier and things like that. We obviously want our players to be safe, and so there are parents who are going to be yelling and screaming from the sidelines because they want their kids to be safe on the field, and it does get very, you get very narrow minded, from the spectator side. So it is good to remember that the referee is there to be impartial and that they are there to just manage the game and make sure, like you said, that the kids are having fun, that they're staying safe, and that they're able to play. I mean, I really hate it when, like in the 7v7 games, when somebody lifts their foot when they're throwing in the ball. I think in one of our games this weekend, it was a meaningless game that two players kept throwing in the ball. I think they each threw it in twice because they kept calling it as a bad throw for each of them, and I'm just like, just can we just move on, like just get the ball on the field and let's go. Because both of them, one of them would jump or lift their back foot or whatever, and I'm like, I get it, we want them to do it proper, but I also want to move on with the game. Like let's go, let's keep it moving.
Yeah. I, and I think that's where having some experience and having some credibility in the game as a referee is so important. I feel a lot more confident as a referee because of my years as a player. Um, I've reached almost a Zen-like perspective where, you know, I know how experienced I am in the game. I know how much I know about this game. I know how hard I'm trying in every game that I officiate. And I also know, right, like the odds that someone who's yelling at me about something has a better pedigree in soccer than I do is pretty low, right? Um,
Hmm.
and it gives me a lot of confidence, right? I don't care if a parent's yelling at me about a foul throw. The other day I finished refereeing a match where I basically ended the match by calling a really tight offside call. And as I'm walking into the center of the field, the dad of the losing team, shouts behind me. He's like, AR, AR, and then I'm just ignoring him because I don't care. And he's like, "Hey, you're a big guy. Like, turn around and look at me." And I just like chuckled and kept walking. Like I think when you get to a certain level in the game, you gain the confidence that, hey, I know a lot and I'm doing the absolute best that I can. You
Hmm.
know, there's not a ton of room for improvement or for me to feel bad or unconfident about a decision that I'm making. And I think it's hard to get to that level. I think if I hadn't had all these years in the game, it would be really hard to take myself out of emotional situations like that. So I think, this is where, right, being a player and a ref, being a coach and a ref, being a player and then coaching can be really helpful, is you start to build experience in the game and you've been in these situations before. You know what the right call is, or you know what the right tactic to set up is.
Hmm.
Doesn't really matter who's yelling at you or pressuring you. So I think that's something that I think, my soccer experience has sort of uniquely set me up for in the refereeing world. It's certainly not insurmountable, but I draw a lot of confidence from the fact that I've played at upper levels of the game, and I know what I'm about. I know ball, and um, gives me a lot of confidence when I go out and referee at high levels.
Yeah, that's good that you have that confidence to go out there, because I know that, especially seeing obviously new referees who you can tell are nervous. And so a lot of times I will tell, like, if I know that a referee is new, I will tell my sidelines, this is a brand new referee. We need to give them space. They're not going to get every call right. So you guys need to calm down during this game, because the leagues that I coach in are no score reported leagues. And so we don't even have to report a score to anybody as far as like what's going on in the game. And so, I mean, obviously the outcome matters, but it's also the perspective of, is the match good? Are the players developing and learning? And let's keep that focus on the team and making sure that that's where our priority is versus what the final score is and what the referee is doing. And one of the things that our association does is they do for younger ages for the 7v7, and I don't know if this has helped at all in refereeing certifications, but they tried to implement what's called certified club linesmen. And so everybody that's in 7v7
Hmm.
divisions, they have volunteer line people from their teams, and the only thing that they are supposed to do is call out of bounds. That's the only thing they're supposed to do. They're not supposed to call offside. They're not supposed to call fouls, nothing. And so I have seen games where it's been totally fine. Some referees just say, hey, if you see the ball go out of bounds and I get the call wrong, let me know. And each of the coaches agree to it, and we don't have anybody help doing that, the line thing. And some referees are very strict on it and no, we need to have line people there helping us with that. And I have seen games where it has also backfired, where a parent tries to call an offside and the referee honors it because I know this person. And it's like, well, you're not giving us the same courtesy on this side of the field. And so I've had problems with that situation where, anyway, so I have no idea what it's helped in any way. I have definitely seen problems with it. They were hoping that parents would be getting more educated on the rules, and I still don't know if that has happened either, because you have people who don't actually research
Yeah,
the
I
rules
think
and
it's
then
really
they're lining.
yeah, I think it's really tough. Um, I'm very much pro initiatives that try to get parents a little bit more up to date with the rules and get them putting it into practice. I
Mm-hmm.
also think, it really helps, right? You're less likely to be screaming at Jeff, the 36-year-old, than you are, who's the dad of your kid's friend, than you are at some random, woman or man in a yellow shirt who shows up and you'll never see them again. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think my overwhelming message to parents, right, is there needs to be a elevated, increased appreciation for the situation that you're in. There is no situation during a 7v7 or a 9v9 game that warrants yelling at a referee. I also think that a lot of youth soccer fields are set up in a way that the parents are right on top of the field and you're right on top of the AR that's on your side and the ref is 10 yards away from you at times. And I think a problem with the game with refereeing is that the parents are right next to the referees. And so things that might be shouted from the stands and might not affect a younger referee or a less confident referee are being screamed at you from 6 feet away. And I also think there's a lot of parents who cross the line. It's totally okay to appeal for fouls. It's not okay to start yelling personal insults at the referee.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think there's also, I've seen so much implications that referees are biased, and it always baffles me. Um, 3/4 of the time, you know, I don't even know who I'm refereeing, right? Like, I may have seen the team once before, but,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, these referees have no incentive to be anything but impartial, and a lot of parents will act as if the referee is trying to job them or trying to take the game away. Um, from sort of a humorous angle, right? Like nobody's paying anybody to fix a U13 soccer match,
Mm-hmm.
and even if they were, the money wouldn't be good enough to get somebody to do it. And yeah, so the perception that hey, the referees are biased against my team for whatever reason has always baffled me. Your referee might be bad, your referee might be young, your referee might be having a shocker and might be missing some unbelievably easy calls. You know, under no circumstances is the referee out to get you. And this attitude pervades to a surprisingly high level. I had an MLS Next game recently where, a coach was unhappy about the amount of time that I added at the end of a match where the other team had equalized and then actually won the match. And as he came over to us, as he was walking away after giving us some, you know, post game chat, he was like,
Mm-hmm.
every time we come down here, the refs hate us. It's every time we come down here, we get jobbed. And he's like, I know how you guys do things down here. And this is a coach at, a U17 MLS Next match, somebody who should absolutely know better. So I think if there's one thing that I would unequivocally put out to parents and coaches and everyone in the soccer world, it's that, we show up to be fair and neutral arbitrators of the game. Um, I've never remotely encountered a referee I who said anything about being biased, or even I saw him on the field and thought, wow, this is a really questionable display of what I think might be biased. So if there's one thing I would love to see kind of stamped out of the game, it's that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can say, I've seen games where I've gone, man, I feel like every call is against us, or, man, this ref's not calling anything for either team, and so, we've seen all aspects of it, and knowing, like for me, I know I don't want to be doing your job, so I, for the most part, try not to say anything ever. Maybe during like a 7v7 game or 9v9 game, if I see a tackle that I think could possibly be dangerous, I might say something, but I'm not going to berate the ref and say over and over and over again and, hound them. I'm just going to say, hey, I wasn't that a foul? And that's basically all I'll say. They can say, yes, it was. No, I didn't see it. Or no, it wasn't. Like, fine, okay, whatever, move on. But it's definitely, like you said, there's always the different perspectives from different people, different angles, depending on what's going on in the game. So for the most part, I usually, especially right after COVID happened, I told a lot of my parents, I said, if we have a ref show up, we will be lucky. So you all just need to be grateful if anybody even shows up, because some of our leagues, we struggled to make sure that we had referees show up. Some games we played without referees, and so we agreed as coaches, let's just play the game, we can't reschedule it or whatever. And so sometimes we did play without refs, and so I've tried to instill in some of the parents, just be grateful if we even have anybody show up to this game, because there's a chance that they might not. And so we just need to make sure that's what we do. And as far as like for me, if you haven't listened to my story as far as getting into coaching, I didn't like what I was seeing going on. And my husband said, if you don't like it, get certified and coach. Guess what? I did. And so, I challenged, that's kind of a challenge that people have been out there. If you don't like the referees that are going on out there, go get certified yourself and you do the job. If you think you can do a better job, then you go and do it. That's one of those things where if you're not willing to put in the time, learn the rules, be a referee yourself or whatever, like, don't say anything. Which is really hard to do. I know it's really hard to do. I did have somebody, I tried to get some questions from people to see if anybody had questions for referees, and somebody said as a joke, but you were kind of talking about it a little bit a second ago, would you prefer reffing games with no parents on the sidelines?
I think it's tough. I love having parents on the sidelines when those parents are intense and into the game in a way that isn't over the line. Mm-hmm. I think crowds are a part of why we do this. And, I also think it's all about context. Refereeing high school or college, you expect to be in an environment where there's going to be people jumping up and down and cheering, and abuse is part of the experience that you expect and probably even sign up for, right? Like, part of the appeal of refereeing in college is the fun of being in a game that's so intense and high level that the student section is chanting like, "You suck, ref." Like, that's fun. What's not fun is a game where the focus is on development. It's on getting players ready for college. It's on getting players ready for, moving up to a higher level of soccer. And you're getting individual voices, which are really vitriolic and over the top. That's where I think it starts to cross the line for a lot of referees, is when things become personal. I have no problem with passion. I have no problem with an instant reaction to shout, "How is that not a foul?" And I don't think a lot of referees do either.
It's a natural response.
The one thing that I would love about it totally is. The one thing that I would love he's having no parents on the sideline for is some of the god awful coaching nuggets that come from parents on the sideline. That's really what I think. Yelling at the ref is one thing, but I think as a referee, I've been privy to a lot of really, really bad points of advice coming from parents to their kids on the field. And so I think certainly the kids would probably prefer, not having parents on the sideline sometimes. But for me, if you come to the game and you're passionate and you're into it and you're doing it in a way that, raises the level of everyone and, raises the fun, I'm all for it.
Yeah, it's fun and it's exciting for the kids, and they want to have that crowd of people cheering on their team and things like that. But I definitely, when it turns and it's the opposite of that, obviously it gets dangerous for everybody, and you can feel that tension, and then it obviously becomes unfun for everybody. And we need to make sure that we remember that we're there for the kids and we want them to have fun and develop and grow, especially like if they're at those younger ages. So, last questions. It's kind of a two-parter, same sort of thing. But since you've been reffing for a while now, what have been one of your favorite moment or moments as far as reffing? Like if there's a specific game or something that you remember, something really awesome happened, or you reffed a game that maybe somebody cool was there or something. So if you could share that. And then in turn, what has been one of your lowest moments as far as something that has happened to you as far as refs? And you can answer that in either order.
Great question. The high point is really easy because there's one that stands out beyond anything else. The DC United Academy, once a year, once the MLS season has ended, they have their MLS Next teams come and play a match day at Audi Field, which is the MLS stadium for anyone who doesn't know. I got assigned to those games, got selected to go work those. So going to an MLS stadium, going in the players' entrance, down to your own referee locker room, walking out the tunnel with the players onto an immaculate grass field in front of a crowd of probably a few hundred to 1,000 people, just running up and down, the field on a place that I've been to dozens of games. One of my coaches back in high school played for DC United. Been a team that I followed since I was a small kid. So that for me was a truly magical experience. And there's two MLS academies. They played the New England Revolution. So both the coaching staffs, it was a big occasion for them. It was a huge occasion for the players to be in that kind of environment. It was two incredibly competitive and fun to watch matches. Um, I think that's a clear high point, and it's probably going to take me a long while to top that one.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to beat that in terms of how cool it was. Um, Worst experience, low point is tough. I think sort of one general thing, this isn't so much an on-field experience, but one thing that the referee community needs to do a little bit better of a job with is providing organization and an upward path to referees and making it clear, here's how you climb the ranks if you're interested in moving up, and here are the people that you should contact. Here are the leagues that we want you to get into refereeing if you want to get to the higher levels.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Everyone is very helpful and affiliative, but there's not a lot of formal infrastructure to know who to reach out to in the first place. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of the information that I've learned about refereeing has been via word of mouth and getting relationships with assigners who are going to give you the games that you want and need to move up in the referee community is definitely a challenge. And these assigners, right, they're assigning hundreds or thousands of games a season. So their time is busy, right? They don't always have time to, answer your paragraph long message asking for advice and, telling them about the leagues you want to work and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that's just a kind of a general struggle. One specific case, and I think this is a great example of, when things go a little bit too far. I was refereeing an adult league game in Boston and sent a player off from the bench for like yelling a vulgarity that I won't repeat on the air. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Incredibly loud so that everyone can hear it, and gave another yellow player second yellow card, sent him off right at the end of a match um, for getting in an off-ball altercation with someone. And the player that I gave a second yellow to followed me into the parking lot, and I was walking back to the subway in Boston, and he like followed me in his car and continued to, um, make give me the middle finger and you know just say nasty things to me. And I think that was a moment where I was like, hey, for $100, this is not what I want. And
Yeah.
it was a hard situation because then you're put in, this is a guy with a career, so you don't want to really go on the warpath and ruin somebody's life over something that is a stupid mistake that he probably is going to regret tomorrow. But at the same time, you feel compelled to stand up for other referees and make sure that this type of abuse isn't tolerated in the future and report these kinds of things. So I think that was a really tough circumstance for me to deal with. Fortunately, I've only ever encountered something like that once, and that was a year and a half ago, so it's been a long time since the last one. But yeah, I think it's those moments, right, that take it from being something that's really joyful to something that all of a sudden becomes, very, very not worth it for what you're putting up with.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately, like me as a coach, I've had those experiences, not maybe not people following me to my car, but definitely unpleasant in nature interactions with, whether it's an opposing parent, a parent of a player, or whatever it may be that, make you guess, am I really volunteering my time to do this job and is it worth it? And that's one of the things that parents maybe need to remember and realize that the people that are coaching your kids, the people that are reffing these games, yes, they're getting paid and it's their job, but it's also a lot of times it's time away from their family that they're volunteering where they could be doing other things, but they are there to help support and dedicate time to the development of your player. And so it's definitely something that we all need to remember, that we are there for the development of these kids and these players and the enjoyment of them in learning the game and growing and developing as human beings. And we need to make sure that we're setting examples as adults to show our kids, that this is something that they're going to want to remember versus, oh my gosh, my dad ran down the referee after the game, and maybe because of their behavior got kicked off their team or suspended for a while or whatever, So you need to make sure that you stay in check. Is this something that is really worth it for you to be fighting and pleading and begging and I don't know, whatever, fighting over, like those people that I talked about earlier in this conversation, the people that somehow ended up in fisticuffs on the sideline of the game. And who knows what started it? Like I said, I didn't do any research into it, but, out of control. Obviously, something happened. Maybe something was said. Who knows? Somebody could have looked at somebody funny. I have no idea. But we just need to remember that if we're adults, we need to act like adults. So let the kids be kids and the adults be adults.
Absolutely. And I think, the ironic part is the higher you go in the game, the more you see that. I love refereeing UPSL, NPSL, the MLS Next, um, MLS academies are joys to referee because they understand it's a serious playing environment and everyone is there to kind of conduct themselves in a professional manner. But we also look and we see the example that some of our more visible figures in football are setting. How often at the end of a Premier League match or a La Liga match do we see the coach and three players surrounding the referee and, haranguing him or her as they come off the pitch? And so I think we need our leaders at the top of the game to set a good example for everyone else as well. But I think, generally for parents, I think as you see your child move up to more serious levels of competition, there is a growing tide in the game that says, we're in a serious environment. We need to treat the coaches and the players and the referees as, serious players and at a certain level professional players or collegiate players, and accord them, the due amount of respect. So, refereeing is a very complex landscape, and there's no one statement that can encapsulate everything. But I think what you said just about, hey, we're all here for the betterment of the players, certainly at young age groups. And even when we aren't, right, by that time they should be at a high enough level that, they don't need your help.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that. And just keeping it all in perspective. Do you have any other lasting things, advice, or anything that you want to share before we end?
Not too much. This is like I said, my journey through this game has been a fantastic and wonderful one, and it continues to go on. If there's anything I would say to, kids, to the next generation, it's put faith in yourself and take your shots. I walked on to my college. I had no guarantee of making the team when I decided to go to RPI. 6 days into my freshman preseason, I felt my groin pop, and it was horrible. And I had no idea if I was going to be on the team or if I had gone to a school in the middle of upstate New York that I wasn't going to be playing soccer at. And I had to, put faith in myself and persevere and work hard and just try to get, on that team to where I wanted to be with that goal. And, refereeing, right? I had a setback, quit refereeing for 3 years because I got abused, and I wasn't having it and had to come back to it a second time. And, even after getting into refereeing, I've had to be very aggressive and straightforward about, hey, this is the level I want to referee at, advocating for myself, getting myself into big games where I then have to go and perform. So, if there's anything I would say, right, whether you're a player or a referee or you want to be either of those things, take your shots. This is the greatest game in the world, and you won't end up regretting, I don't think, anything that you choose to do with this beautiful game that we have for ourselves. So, yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's great advice and good things for all of us to think on with the information that we've shared. Making sure if you're interested in being a referee, check out your local, I would say, state organization or whatever it is that you need to get in touch with to be able to become a certified referee, and seeing how you can get interested and certified in that and get going in that. There's always a shortage of referees, so we could always use more good, willing people to help ref and grow the game, especially as the game is flourishing in our country. We definitely need all the help that we can get. So if you're interested in that, and even just seeing what it's like, give it a shot for 6 months. See if you like it. Sometimes shifting from a different portion of the game to another, but you still being able to be involved is something that is great for players, and players who are now maybe out of the game, but they still want to be involved, whether it's through reffing or coaching or mentoring or something. That's a great way to stay involved, is getting involved in your local ref programs. But thank you, Charlie, for coming on today and answering our questions. Maybe we'll have you back for another follow-up in a while if I get a bunch of questions from people that they want to have answers from or something. We can pick your brains with some of those questions from parents in the future. But thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, it was a pleasure being on, Katie. Thanks for having me. You got a great pod. Glad I was able to contribute some content, and can't wait to see who's on next.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much for coming on, and we'll see you later.
Thank you guys for joining in this 2-part episode with Charlie Sandson. Thank you, Charlie, for all of your insight and answering our questions as parents, coaches, and players. If you have any follow-up questions or ideas for future episodes, please reach out to me at kickitwithkatiepod@gmail.com or on Instagram. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and give a 5-star review. Thank you guys for kicking it with me. Have a great day. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at kickitwithkatiepodcast _between all the words. You can reach out to me with questions at kickitwithkatiepod@gmail.com. I also have a feature with SpeakPipe where you can leave me your own voicemail message if you want to be featured on the podcast. Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.